We did it. Woo! Goodness.
Curse of the laptop.
What'd you say?
The curse of the laptop. I'm on my phone with you.
Yeah, and I was trying to do it on my laptop, and then that didn't work. So I got my phone. Hold on. Now I got to put it in the tripod. You look great.
Well, thank you so much.
Yes.
I can't see you in this moment.
Yeah, I'm setting up putting the thing in the thing. Hold on. That's where I'm going to be sitting shortly. Let's see. Are we in it? Yeah.
Yes, you look great too.
Thank you. I'm in my mother's office. I want to show her little things up there.
Oh, wow. That's the photograph I took.
Exactly. I actually just noticed today that you took that photograph.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're
you're down here.
I am. I'm here for spring break. We got here earlier this week, but everybody's been sick. It's been just like a whirlwind.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I think it's just cold season, weird temperature changes and shifts and things we weren't ready for. But we're here on the other side. How you feeling?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for accepting my request. Yeah.
Indeed.
So I'll start with my little intro spiel. It's quick, just so I can capture it here with us. My name is Melike. Hi, everybody. And we are here with MUVA Says. This is not unlike a podcast, though it's a little bit more informal. We're going to be speaking with my guest artist, MUVA, Dr. Sabiyha Prince today. And we're just going to have a little chat, a little convo, spill some tea, talk about the things that are important to us as parents and as mothers. Just kind of in that sharing, talk about our triumphs, talk about some trials, talk about other maternal figures in our lives, and ultimately just we're here to hear about you, Sabiyha. So if you want to just start by introducing yourself, tell us a little bit about the work that you are doing at this juncture in your life.
Okay. Well, hi to everyone. Hi to you. Hi to your network of friends and family and cohorts and co-conspirators. Yes, my name is Sabiyha Prince, for those who don't know me, and I am a cultural anthropologist, and I'm a visual artist. And I'm also a filmmaker in the other iteration of my life and my career. I have been a college professor for a number of years. I've done work on Capitol Hill, primarily around different forms of advocacy and education. And those things are my passion. I would say social justice. I was a part of the anti-apartheid movement, and I've also been involved in environmental justice campaigns. Yeah, at this point, I guess I more recently had the very distinct pleasure to co-direct a film with filmmaker Samuel George about a historic African-American community here in Washington, D.C. called Berry Farm. And we have screened the film in about 20 different locations. By the time the summer comes, it's going to be about 25. We've won a few awards, and we've been in 5 film festivals. So we've been very excited to do, work that's very different for me, but it's also very similar. It's kind of like an extension of what I've been doing. And I guess one way you could characterize it in our field is as public anthropology. That is doing work that is not just limited to the academic sphere, but also reaches people beyond that. So I see this as a, part of my growth as an artist, but also as a part of my work, educating and kind of reaching out and breaking down barriers between different communities. And I'm also I chair the board of Empower DC, which is a grassroots group here in Washington. And they are also the fiscal sponsor of the DC Legacy Project. And that's an organization that I'm also a part of. And they were responsible with the Berry Farm Tenants and Allies Association for getting the buildings landmarked at the Berry Farm site, which is a public housing site that
Wow.
was largely demolished through a redevelopment scheme of the DC government.
Amazing work that you're doing. Phenomenal woman you are. Wow. I really look up to you and this work that you're doing. It's just, you can see just kind of the unfolding through I guess, the different paths that you've taken in your life. Like you're saying, that this place has become a natural evolution of the work that you've invested in your life. And that's, I think, marvelous. And one of the, I think, most powerful things in life, I think, when you take away the pressure of capitalist society and how you got to make and do and I think I see more that there's a place of act of service that maybe that is your driving force. And I think most importantly in these conversations, when I zoom out, it's like, okay, yeah, you're a mom. Yes, you're an artist, but most importantly, you're a person and a human with needs and seeing others with needs. And how is that kind of maybe shown up, when I say it that way, in the work that you're doing, like serving a need for yourself and then out being able to fulfill and meet other people's needs?
Well, I mean, that's an interesting question. You know, it's funny. I don't think of it like that. I think of it more as like it's a passion.
Yeah.
I'm driven by my sense of passion about injustice. It bothers me, and I think that has to do maybe a bit with how I was raised and also the context in which I'm a child of the 60s and the 70s. And you know, I mean, it's not unlike other decades, but as everybody knows, I mean, it was on and popping in the 60s. I mean, you know, when I was a kid, Malcolm X was still alive. Martin Luther King was still alive. You know, Medgar Evers was still alive. You know, all the Kennedy brothers, you know, all these things were good. And, you know, we were affected by that. My brother and I were both affected by that. And I would imagine a lot of young people growing up during those times where we maybe didn't have an opportunity to express it. Maybe we didn't even know how we were impacted. But I know that I was impacted emotionally. And we were always aware in my household of the news and stuff and what was going on, you know, so you kind of can't escape that. You have this sense of injustice, and my parents were motivated by that too. They felt that umbrage and that anger, you know. I think it's more like that. I don't see myself as doing anything special or particularly heroic or particularly, you know, I'm just different from other folks. I think these are the things that motivate me.
Yes.
And I also think it's an outgrowth of the relationships that I've had over the years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Be on this.
Yes. I think
you have relationships with people you won't even know, people that you've known from your 30s and 40s. Later in life could become instrumental, could become you having different opportunities, different job opportunities, different experiences, access to different resources. So this is the culmination of, you know, not only my ideas and my experiences, but also the people that I've had over decades.
So you're saying we're a product of the people who impact our lives and are part of our lives, and the people are in our environment and their feelings and the things that bother us and burden us and make us want to wake up and act and do the things that we do in the world. And I think that brings me to my question just about, were there any women, maternal figures in your life that were instrumental in shaping your beliefs and shaping how you decided to walk as a woman?
You know, undoubtedly, and I think that happens both directly and indirectly, right?
Mm-hmm.
My mom used to always talk about this thing called incidental learning, you know, because she's a school teacher, and you know that idea, and I'm sure you know your son is watching you and imitating you and watching other people around. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I had women in my life. I watched my mom as a school teacher. I saw her when she went on strike. I saw her when she got her master's degree, and she's on a job and she's doing mom stuff, and she's also getting this graduate degree. Her mother, my maternal grandmother, was born in 1899.
Mm-hmm.
It was my paternal grandmother. They all four of my grandparents were all born in the same year, 1899,
Wow.
different parts of South Carolina. And my grandmother had about a fourth grade education. You know, these are folks, they did not have much access to education, to even to books. You
Yeah.
know, they were in rural areas, they were agrarian workers, but they had a strong desire to succeed and to provide a better life for their kids.
Mm.
Don't necessarily appreciate that when you're a child,
Right.
but you appreciate it in retrospect. You
Yeah.
know, I was able to do some oral histories with my
Mm.
mom and learn more about my grandmother, and she told me all kind of phenomenal stories.
Can you
But
tell us one?
yes, this one is pretty funny. Um, so they, I'll just preface it by saying that my grandfather came to DC in 1917.
Okay.
I'm born in DC. My mom was born in DC, and he was born in 1899. He came here in 1917, moved in with his extended family members in Georgetown, you know, which was, you know, upscale, it's a black neighborhood. It's an upscale neighborhood now,
Right.
but portions of it were largely African American. And so he came there to live with his extended kin. Imagine he's like a, you know, 17, 18-year-old, you know, young man, does this by himself, lives with his extended kin, does all kind of jobs, different kind of, you know, menial work, if you will, goes back, gets my grandmother, they marry, and they then move in with his extended kin. Well, that didn't last long because she was like, no, we have to have our own place. I can't, you know, be doing all this kind of, you know, when you're in a situation like that, it's like the immigrant experience, right? You're sharing resources, you're
Right.
living together,
Yeah.
and all that. And she had a vision for her family that involved something a little different. So I don't know the nature of how she convinced or cajoled or whatever it was to get my grandfather to, you know, move, but they did move. They moved, they had children. She lost one child at the age of 2. He was born with a congenital heart problem. So I never met him. That would have been my only uncle on that side, but he passed away.
Mm.
They had my aunt Lucy, who I also did not meet. She passed away in childbirth.
Mm.
So then they had my aunt Helen and my mom. My mom was the baby of the family. At some point, they moved into public housing, the Arthur Caper Carrollsburg housing project, which has now been demolished in here in DC. But I'm going to get around to the funny part because that doesn't
No, I
sound
mean,
funny yet.
I'm with you. I'm following you. I love this history. Yeah.
Well, the thing that just amused me was how my mom told me that when my grandfather, he worked numerous kind of jobs, right? He had 2 girls, 3 up until she was 25. So actually all 3 girls they put through Howard University. Again, my grandfather had like about a 4th grade education,
Wow.
you know. Grandmother was not working outside of the home, or so my grandfather thought. My
Uh-oh.
mom then told me she got a little secret job on the side that he didn't know anything about. She was making that money and just squirreling it away.
Wow.
And she would say, if your dad calls, tell him that I'm at the store. Now, can you imagine this? This is a woman that she was a little thing. She never learned how to drive, you know, but they had a drive to have a better life for their children.
Wow.
She told my grandfather, I want to buy a house. We need to buy a house. And he was like, we do not have the money to buy a house. And she said, actually, we do.
Oh.
And she produced that. And the rest is history. They moved into
Wow.
in Northeast DC in a neighborhood called Trinidad. And when I was born, I lived there. And she took care of me. She took care of me when my mom went back to work. So I stayed with her very early. I mean, from the ages of probably 1 until the time I went to the 1st grade.
And look at that. The power, the passion, the motivation that is required, the balls. Let me say, you really, especially in that day and age, I mean, how was she even getting to and from where she needed to go? Who was willing to hire her in those conditions? Were they aware? What was she doing?
She was cleaning, of course.
Oh my God, yeah.
Florida Capital, and she was taking the bus, you know.
Wow.
She was leaving her kids at home.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And that's
and your mom sees that and sees that anything is possible. That, you know, I feel like so many times women, I mean, so many times I feel like I'm octopussy, like this, arms in 8 different places at once, and getting it all done somehow. And making it happen is just, it's something about the spirit and the will of a woman. I just definitely, there's no doubt about.
And you know what else is in this story that I'm convinced is the power of having access to resources. My mother had her as a resource.
Right.
Days, do you see how much money women are spending?
Yeah.
On care? Families are spending on childcare.
How much I'm spending on childcare? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes, that intergenerational support system,
right.
Support network that is definitely, I think, for some maybe comes underappreciated, but when you live in a city and you have to, and you're putting yourself out there like that, yes, it becomes an invaluable and irreplaceable resource. Yes. Having mother, sister, auntie, you know, around, living in the house, sharing resource and supporting one another.
Right.
And definitely, I think back to what you're saying about just the invisible support systems, knowing that, having someone there and not even realizing how much them being there is a service to you, is guiding you and shaping you. And so it makes me think, I think of your grandmother. What was her name?
Her name was Cynthia Franklin. Her maiden name was Campbell. So Cynthia Campbell Franklin.
Cynthia Campbell Franklin, doing what she needed to do. And your mom then getting a higher education too, while being a mom, led to you with all of the accomplishments. You're just building on the backs of, you know, the work of the women before you, right? It becomes this legacy that we carry in a way that it seems very natural to you. And that's a superhuman power. Definitely. I think about when we're having children and when we are pregnant, when we are in that creative, it's like the ultimate creative space. I think we're creating another life, and the possibilities then that come from that, before you even get to the place of like, well, I have to make X, Y, and Z happen to support this life. It's the actual, like, the channel, being in the body, being a vessel, bringing in another soul, bringing together every single bone and blood vessel and the heart. And I think a lot about like how, when I was pregnant, the thoughts that I was thinking and being in school, getting my master's degree, how that was nurturing and feeding my son in the process and becoming a human being.
Wow.
I wonder, when you were pregnant with your daughter, where were you? What were you doing in those moments?
I was hovering over a toilet throwing up. No.
You're like, how am I going to get this body to cooperate, child?
He was very good sign. That's a good sign. That means the baby's healthy.
And she got hair. Apparently, they say did she come out with a bunch of hair?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big full head of hair. Yeah. And I have 2 daughters. My eldest, I was in graduate school.
You were in grad school too? Yes. Look at that. And who did I talk to right before I was like, I gotta quit? I called you.
Yeah. And yeah, and it was, it was a bit of a surprise, but it happened when I was just finishing up my coursework, thank goodness,
Okay.
because that's, I mean, it's all hard, but that's probably some of the hardest part, particularly when you're just getting there. And my environment was, it was foreign to me. Even if I was born in a family that, had a lot of books and liked to read, the graduate experience was still foreign to me. And I had a very wonderful mentor named Dr. Leith Mullings. And without her, I'm almost certain that I wouldn't have finished. It's a possibility I would.
Where did you get your master's from?
I went straight to the PhD. So I went to the City University of New York Graduate School in University City, right in Manhattan.
Beautiful.
They moved locations since the time I was there. I started in '88. It took me a long time. But I got pregnant with Mariama when I was, you have to get like 65 credits, and then you can then go on and do your field work, which allows you to then, the data that you gather to write your dissertation. So, in theory, they say it's going to take 6 years.
Okay.
3 years with the coursework and another 3 years to get funding, gather field work, and then write and defend the dissertation, which is poppycock, which is a word I've never used before, but I'll
because
that's
what that's the word it requires.
That's the word I'm going to use today, because it's really absurd.
Okay.
But yeah, so, and then I was also doing research because my mentor, God bless her, she became an ancestor last year. She was a mentor in the truest sense of the word, i.e., she made me feel like I belonged. She's a very good teacher, and she also gave me opportunities to grow as a researcher. And she also allowed my name to get on to with some other students as published authors too. So she gave me an opportunity to do some research on birth, on Black women and preterm and low birth weight deliveries. And so I was kind of walking around Harlem all big and nauseous during the summer gathering those data.
Wow.
So a lot of birthing themes around that time.
Yeah. And what did you end up writing your thesis or your dissertation on?
I did my work on the Black middle class in Central and West Harlem. I was pushing literature forward. Most anthropological literature on Black people tends to focus on the poor or the homeless or some other marginalized groups. And I was always of the belief that it was important to understand the kind of diversity, socioeconomic diversity among African Americans to truly understand the population.
Right.
I also, anthropology is a very colonial, a little bit of a, there's definitely a colonial history and a tinge there of the researchers being of a higher class than the people that they are researching. And so asymmetrical relationship. And I was interested in making the relationship a little more equal between researcher and researched. So that was what motivated me to want to do my research with a middle class population.
It sounds a bit like it's reminding me of what we're calling now like social practice. When you're, in the environment, working next to the people. I mean, that maybe, well, it doesn't only relate to the arts. I think social practice is a whole study in itself now. That new school, everybody's talking about how to be socially impactful, socially engaged. How is this a social practice? How are we actually? Yeah, I think it's people maybe looking at from the lens of just being a little bit more human rather than maybe looking at people through a magnifying glass or a microscope or whatever it is.
Yeah. There's more sensitivity, more of a social justice.
Yeah.
Our field's gone through, I think a lot of fields have reevaluated their practice, within the context of trying to be more equitable, trying to be more respectful, different ways of engaging with people that are less exploitative.
Exploitative, that's the word. I think there's an interesting parallel maybe to mention with more women entering the workforce and that being part of a conversation broadening to include these kind of more human and less exploitative, like you said, practices. So we've been on here for quite a little while, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'd love to just like do maybe some rapid fire questions before we close out with the last one. Maybe like 3 questions. How's that sound?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, cool. What's your rebellious side like?
Oh, Lordy. There's good rebellious and there's bad.
Right. I always say good chaos and bad chaos. Which one do you want?
I'd rather focus on the good because I get so angry with myself when you ever like speak out of turn and you're like, oh gosh, like, you know, what is that? Is that my, you know, the devil on my shoulder that just makes me blurt out the wrong thing? So, but my rebellious side, I guess I do like to, I push back against certain norms or people thinking of things as being normative. You know, I guess that's part of my rebellious side. I like to advocate for, I guess I would say this. I feel like if you're in a privileged group, you should be pushing back against your privilege in a sense. So, of course, I'm a woman of color, not necessarily privileged categories. I am middle class. I kind of own that. I'm largely a cisgendered woman, but I'm an ally to the queer community. So I like to push back in that area when people are homophobic or transphobic. You know, I'd like to stand up and, you know, speak out when I'm in spaces that are largely heterosexual and cisgendered. I think it's important to do that, just in the same way as it's important for white people to stand up and speak out against white supremacy and not be silent, and men to stand up against misogyny and not be silent. So I feel that's a responsibility for all of us in whatever privileged categories that we may occupy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. Push up against maybe the status quo in the spaces that we're inhabiting. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great. Next question is, how did you or do you keep your kids close when you're creating, when you're painting, photographing, writing, whatever it might be? Did you ever involve them in the process? And if so, how or not?
I've taken their pictures. They very much are my music.
I've seen,
yeah, a lot of my, not so much the mixed media work and the digital collages. You will see images of my children who are now adults, you know, but I incorporate them in that way. And I've always liked to create a space for them growing up where they could be creative. And so, excuse me, they're both very creative. Musically, in terms of their writing, visually, they both, Tandi won an award once for some beautiful work that she did at an art camp in Columbia, Maryland. So Tandi plays 4 instruments. Mariama grew up playing instruments and writing poetry. So, you know, I grew up in a creative environment and they've grown up in a creative environment. And that's been easy to do because it's who we are.
Yeah, that's the expression, natural. Yeah. All right, last one. If you could have a guide, a book that's like kind of a how-to as a creative, an artist, a mom, whatever you want to call it, and you want to call it The Art of Blank, what would it be?
Oh, Lord. I would say the art of it has to be just one thing.
No, it can be whatever you want.
I would just say at the root of my parenting style, perhaps reflecting that is the art of love and respect. I think those are two things that go together with being a good parent. I mean, you gotta love them, you know, because if you don't, you're in trouble. So, I mean, there's lots of people who have all kind of issues, anger issues and things with their kids for a number of different reasons too. You know, so love is at the root of it. You know, but sometimes people do bad things in the name of love. So it's also important to respect. I've always respected my children as individuals. I understand that they are not my property They are their own individuals. They belong to themselves. They belong to this world. They belong to the universe. And it's up for them to grow up and be what they envision for themselves rather than living out some sort of vision that I have for them. So
Period.
it's hard. It can be hard for parents, but the art of letting go and the art of letting them be and not having them to be your vision. But, there are things that I require. I require them to be respectful of themselves, of myself and others. I hope to nurture them that they would love themselves. But it's up to them what they want to become. They do not have to fulfill any of my, idiosyncrasies or hang-ups or visions for themselves. And I guess the best way that you put them on that path is by giving them opportunities, letting them be free, letting them think freely, while also guiding them with the values that you have. So it's quite a dance. It's a nuance. You know what I mean? And it's not beyond all of us. And if you struggle with that, then you turn to your community, perhaps turn to people that you feel can help you. But I feel that those are important approaches to parenthood for me.
Beautiful. Well, Sabiyha, thank you so much for sharing just a glimpse into the multiverse that you are. I think you're amazing, and I'm sure my audience will too. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you, love you deeply, and I hope to see you soon.
Yes, love you too.
Mwah.
Mwah. Bye.
Bye-bye.